Well, good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday morning to you. Todd Lewis here, getting ready to start our hour-long gathering for this week. I hope you've all had a good week, a week of feeling proactive in how you're dealing with challenges that might come up in your life, in going after facilitating as much positivity in your life as possible, because all of that starts here. And this is where we have the most power to make that happen. And that's what we're going to be discussing today. The manual for the human brain is kind of going to be the crux of what we'll talk about today. But obviously, today is really going to be about, as it is every week, interacting with you. If you're joining in YouTube, which it seems is the way that most people are joining live on this program, type into the chat to say hello and let me know that you're here. As you see me looking off to the side here, that's because I'm looking over to the chat so that I can have the conversation with you, because that's what this is really about. It's less about lecture. It's much more about us communicating together. And if you're watching not live, then I have to ask you, why are you not attending live? You really should be here live. This is where the real interactions happen. And those of you that have been on these programs before and have been commenting and feel that you're getting benefit from these programs and interacting live while they're happening, type that into the chat too. Share that with people. Let them know that is helpful, this back and forth interaction. Julie says, good morning. Hello, Julie. Beth Ann says, I made it and can hear you. Fantastic, Beth Ann. That's great. I was on early, and then I realized that I'm not sure how we're going to be able to communicate to make sure that you're able to get on this time. So I'm very glad to see that you were able to get in as well, Beth Ann. Who else do we have joining us here live this morning? Hopefully we've got more people that are coming in as we get started. Just a couple of things from me. I'm going to do my best to take my own advice and do the same things that I'm recommending that each of you do on each of these programs. And last week, to recap previously on how to take charge of your life. No. Last week, what we talked a lot about was managing self-talk, self-communication, and the power of what we believe to be true and not true in our lives, in the environment around us, and so forth. So, and the exercise for people for this week was to pay very close attention to your self-talk and how you're communicating with yourself over the course of the week. And those of you that are on here live, type into the chat. Let me know if you did that this week, if you found yourself being much more conscious than you usually are of the communication strategy that you're using with yourself. Because it's there 24/7, whether we want it to be or not. It's one of those voices that is always with us, always communicating with us, whether it's, sometimes it seems louder than others, right? Did you feel yourself catching yourself? If you had a moment during the week where things didn't go the way you were hoping, and rather than saying, oh, that was such a stupid decision I just made, or that was so dumb, I'm such an idiot, and going, well, nope. Now that is really negative self-talk. And am I, that is not the truth. I'm not an idiot. I'm a smart person. We're all smart people to varying degrees and in different areas. We all have a very powerful resource at our fingertips, or at least under our caps, right? If you're wearing a cap like I am. And are we utilizing that to the best of our ability by maintaining that self-talk? So type into the chat and let me know. Did you notice yourself paying closer attention to the way you communicate with yourself? Hello to Patrick, who says, good morning, Patrick. Glad you could join us this morning as well. Julie says, very much more conscious of self-talk and managed to be more positive this week, even though many things went sideways. And that's the key, right, Julie, is the more we can manage, the only thing that we truly have power over and control over in our lives, the one thing we have at least some control over, and more control than we realize, is how we respond and react to what happens to us. We don't always have control over what happens. We don't always have control over the external forces that are impacting our lives on a day-to-day basis, but we do have control over how we react and respond to that, and that's where our self-talk becomes so very important. Who else do we have joining us in the live program today? Please be interactive on these programs. Just like Julie, Beth Ann, and Patrick have been already, type into the chat. Let me know that you're here, and we're going to be talking today specifically about the manual for the human brain. The manual for the human brain. We are given this incredible computer, if you will, at birth. We are given this incredible utility, this tool that we are going to use every second, every nanosecond of every moment of our lives, from the moment we're born until the moment we're dead. We are given this incredible tool, and yet we're not given a manual about how to use it. Just imagine if you were to buy some complex piece of machinery you had never used before, and they didn't give you a manual or at least a URL to go to download a PDF on how to use it. We'd be lost. We'd be doing a lot of trial and error, and that can either, at the very least, damage that tool that we're using, or even worse, damage our entire lives by hurting us, right? If we don't know how to use this powerful tool very well, it can be damaging us. It can be damaging people around us. We need to figure out a manual, a system for using this incredible biological computer that we have between our two ears. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. And then, of course, we're going to open it up throughout to interactions with you. So I want to encourage everyone, again, this is a safe space. Please feel free to type into the chat whatever you're feeling, including if what you're feeling is you disagree with what I've just said. You disagree with every single thing I've just said. Type that into the chat. Let's have a conversation about it. My only request from everyone that's involved in these programs, because these are about positivity, right? Positivity does not mean a complete lack of discourse, a complete lack of debate, a complete lack of discussion. That's part of what makes a wonderful, positive society environment, is us being able to have a discussion. So I don't want anyone to feel like, well, I just got to go along with whatever is said here. No, if you disagree with me. My only rule of thumb is let's just try and do it in a way that is considerate to each other. Rather than saying something like, Todd, you're a complete idiot and this is a bunch of BS. Maybe say, Todd, I disagree with what you're saying, and here's kind of why, and I'd love to have a conversation about that. The words that we use are very important, aren't we? I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here for just a moment. Lucid and Lunatic is here, says, hi, everyone. Hi, Joni. I know who you are. Yeah. And Lucid or Lunatic says, the self-talk is real, and I find myself saying 4 good things to myself when I catch my itty-bitty shitty committee is pushing the negative thoughts. I love that. My itty-bitty shitty committee. That's kind of brilliant, Joni. I love that. Patrick says, one of my favorite quotes on how we react to something is from Hamlet. Oh, it doesn't get much better than the Bard. Quote, there is nothing either good or bad, but things make it so. There is nothing, I should know this, I performed in this show, and I already misquoted it. Let's try this again. Quote, there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. That's that philosophy that what is real versus what we believe to be real. And that's absolutely true. And that is a great quote. And Shakespeare knew what he was talking about. And everything that we're talking about here each week is rooted deeply in human psychology, which really does not change. Our understanding of it changes from moment to moment, from year to year, from decade to decade, as we learn more and more about this complex computer between our ears. Human psychology itself doesn't really change. We are complex creatures, but we do have a system. We're rooted in a system just like a computer. And that's why we have to have this manual for our human brain. Now, I was going to divert somewhere, and I don't remember where I was going with that. Maybe it'll come back to me, and if it doesn't, that's okay. I should probably stay on task anyway. Beth Ann says, disagreement is how we learn. Amen, Beth Ann. Julie says, love both of those comments. And Beth Ann says, if you haven't explored all sides of something, how can you be sure of your own views? And Julie says, very true, Beth Ann, and I second that. We have to be able to have discussions. We have to be able to have debates, even with people who have viewpoints that are in stark contrast with our own. And that's tough. It's really tough because sometimes it takes a lot of energy, right? But I think it takes less energy and it becomes much more productive when we all agree to go into it with the purpose of having a discussion. And that means on both sides. We got to stop the name calling. We've got to stop the yelling at each other. We've got to stop the way we're communicating verbally and through textual means like social media. What we say, the words we say, make a difference. That was the point I was going to make a little earlier. That was going a little bit off topic, but hey, see how it all comes back around? The words we use matter. They really do. That's why I always, I kind of struggle when people say, you know, talk is cheap, you know, or, you know, what you can say whatever you want, but it's actions that speak louder than words, right? And there's some truth to that, of course, as there is in most statements. There's some truth, but there's also some danger in that oversimplifying things. To say talk is cheap and actions speak louder than words, then that's easy for us to say that, well, words don't really matter. It's the actions. And yes, actions are very powerful. Actions are very meaningful. And in some ways, actions can be more powerful than words, especially when it comes to, you know, violence and the talk of violence versus the action of violence. But make no mistake, the talk of violence has consequences too, has incredible power. Power to inspire. We have, in our words, we have the power to inspire people. And we have the power to diminish and crush people with the words that we use. And all you have to do is think back to a moment in your life where somebody that was important in your life had that kind of effect on you. We've all had those moments. Somebody said something negative and it affected us for an entire day, a week, a month, maybe our entire lifetimes. That's that human psychology that we never can get rid of, that human brain, that computer, how it processes those words is part of what we're going to discuss today as part of the human mind. All right. Who else do we have joining us in the chat before we jump in here? Type into the chat and let us know you are here. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you again to Julie, Beth Ann, Patrick, Joni, and yeah, I think that's it. Julie, Beth Ann, Patrick, Joni, who I know are here because they have commented in the chat. Also, if you're watching the replay of this, please feel free to share this program if you feel this would be helpful in any way to somebody else in your life. I'm trying to make these public as much as I can so that you can share these. And also share our Facebook group that we are a part of. We've got about 28 members on there now. It's growing each week. We want to keep expanding that as a place in between these sessions that we can also communicate with each other with positivity and things like that. And Joni, I want to compliment you on your daily short videos that you've been doing about just bringing positivity into the world. If people haven't been checking those out, you should. It's a great exercise, not just for the people that's affecting, that Joni is reaching through those short videos, but also for Joni yourself for doing that. Something happens in us when we take these simple, relatively simple actions that can bring positivity into the world. Amanda says, hi, I'm here. Originally got on the wrong link. Okay, no worries. Glad you're here on the right link now. Welcome, Amanda. It's great to have you here as well. Now let's go ahead and dive right in to the manual for the human brain. So again, as I mentioned, the human brain is really the most complex and wonderful computer known to humankind. It just happens to be a computer that is made out of biological material rather than synthetic material. But much like a computer, in order to get the most out of it, in order to truly understand how to utilize that tool to the best of our ability, we have to have an understanding of it, a manual to help us navigate how to use that brain. Now, I already did a check-in early on, but I'm going to do another one real quick here for anyone that just joined us. I want to do a check-in. How has your week been? So type into the chat and let us know how things have been going this week, and were you able to better manage the self-talk as we spoke about in our last gathering? A few of you already commented on that, and I'm so glad that that was powerful. Lucid or Lunatic says, "Oh, thanks, Todd. I love doing them," referring to her short videos. Really, really great, bringing positivity into the world. But how has your week been? Please feel free to type that into the chat. I will be checking that periodically as we go as well. And, of course, if you have any questions or comments, let me know too. The first thing I want to talk about here is what we call the left brain, right brain concept. Now, while this scientifically is not necessarily a hard and fast rule, some scientists believe that this is really a quite true scientific statement, and others feel that there's some truth in it, but there's also some of it is just a good way of representing the two different psychological sides to our brain rather than the actual physical sides. But an awful lot of scientists, really firmly believe that we have a left side to our brain and a right side to our brain, and the left side of our brain is primarily the logic side of our brain. And the right side of our brain is more the feelings side of our brain. Now, that's the most simplified version of this. We're going to go into greater detail here. But knowing that both of us have two sides to our brain, no one's got just one half. Now, that's not to say that we don't have tendencies more toward one side of the brain or the other. Everyone has tendencies, some much greater than others, toward more the left side or the right side of our brain, as we're going to refer to them today. But the more understanding that we have about this basic structure of our brain and which side of our brain we each seem to be driven by the most, the more effective we can be in managing our day-to-day challenges. So it's so important to know that. And we do this through daily practice. Now, again, the logic side, the left side of our brain, it's also kind of where the numbers, the organization happens in our minds. That logic side of our brain, whereas the right side of our brain is more where the imagination, intuition, that gut feeling tends to come from. And through daily practice, we have to have a system in place for using our minds. Think of it like I said, a computer. What's the first piece of software that loads into the computer first thing when you boot it up? It's the operating system. And what we're talking about on each of these programs is, in essence, the operating system you're loading into your brain first thing in the morning when you wake up to make sure that it is as prepared as possible to handle whatever data comes into it throughout the course of the day. Then you're much more likely to be able to handle it in powerful, congruent, and effective ways for yourself and those around you going forward. The left side of the brain is also what's kind of the epicenter for facts, for organizing of facts about the world around us, whereas the right side of our brain is kind of where more creative thinking happens. So you can see there two very different ways of processing information. And through forming habits, we can really tap into that and have much more control over, or at least understanding of which side of the brain am I using more right now, and is there a way, would it be helpful if I accessed that other side a little bit more right now to be more effective in the way I'm dealing with a specific challenge. Remember, it takes about 21 days of constant and consistent action to form an ongoing new habit. Now, what habits have you formed, and how can you change them if you want to? And that's the first question is, do you want to make those changes? Because the only true changes that happen in our lives happen because we want them to happen. We don't make lasting change for anyone else in our lives. They can affect how much we want to make those changes. We can make those changes because we want for ourselves to be a better person for these other people in our lives, but that is just as much about us as it is about them. We have to really desperately want and or feel that we need to make that change. But guess what? The want is much more powerful than the need overall. Beth Ann says, what's most interesting to me is how life can change whether we're right or left leaning or processing. I used to be primarily logic driven, but post PTSD, I've discovered I'm very emotional driven. And that kind of self-reflection and self-understanding, Beth Ann, is really at the core, again, of the manual of the human brain. your understanding of that I used to probably be a little bit more logic driven than maybe I am right now because of things that have happened and that have affected the patterns in my mind. And now I feel a little bit more driven by the emotion. And through that understanding, you may be able to take a little bit more control in a moment-to-moment basis. And all it takes is a little bit of control, a little bit of saying, okay, I'm going to take a moment and try to understand what's happening up here and in here a little bit right now and see if I can take the reins of it a little bit more. So let's dive into talking a little bit about how to take charge of this amazing computer, your brain. Now, the first step in this process is we have to have goals. We've got to have goals for what it is that we want to do. The goals are kind of the thing that keep us able to bridge the left brain and the right brain together and have both of them working in harmony toward one specific target. So the goals that we set for ourselves are so important. And in a future weekly gathering, I'm going to go into detail of exactly how to set goals for yourself, do it in a way that is going to bring you results, that's going to have you feel powerful and in charge of your life in a way you've never felt before. I could devote and have devoted in programs all across the world, online and in person. I have devoted entire 5-hour programs to this. I'm going to do one of them in one of our hour programs coming up here. The next way to take charge of this amazing computer, your brain, is through proper planning. Planning gives yourself the roadmap. It takes a lot of that guesswork out of having your left brain and your right brain, the logic side, the creative side, the fact-based side, and the emotional side, from warring with each other, trying to determine what is the best use of my time right now. We waste an immense amount of time on a day-to-day basis asking ourselves the question, what should I be doing right now? I don't know. I don't know what I should be doing. Should I be doing what I want to do right now? Should I be doing what I have to do? So by having proper planning and devoting a specific time each day to planning out your day just a little bit, you're going to be able to take a lot of that away from up here and have yourself have a distinct plan going forward, which makes those two halves of the brain work together rather than war with each other trying to figure out what to work on. Because guess what? The left brain may know I need to be doing this. This is what I really should be doing right now. But the right brain, creative, touchy-feely, warm, fuzzy part of us says, yeah, but I'd much rather watch this new show on Netflix that I really wanted to watch. Or, oh, I really should clean the kitchen because I feel so cluttered right now. You know what? That can wait. You can put that out of your mind for right now. Cleaning the kitchen's important, but there might be other things that end up being even more important. The next thing is through thinking. Now, this may seem very obvious and straightforward. Cheers. Coca-Cola, a non-sponsor of this video, but you're welcome, Coke. It may seem very obvious that thinking may be important when it comes to running this incredible computer of ours, our brain. But we are not educated certainly not in American society. Our education system is not really set up for critical thinking or even just general thinking. And what I mean by thinking is just stopping for a moment and actually looking at the big picture of a problem, an issue, a way you might be feeling in any given moment. Our education system is set up to teach us to memorize facts, to memorize equations, to memorize stuff in a book. And while memorization can be very important and a very positive way to learn things, it is not necessarily teaching us how to think in a moment-to-moment basis. So when I say thinking as a way to help through this problem, is that you need to sometimes stop and look at what is the big picture of what's actually happening here. Let me take a moment and think about what's actually going on. Right now I'm feeling really stressed because this problem, this challenge that has presented itself, feels insurmountable right now. But is it actually insurmountable? How bad is this? Is it really as bad as I think it is? It probably isn't. 9 times out of 10, the things that we worry about happening don't end up happening. The worst case scenarios don't end up becoming what is actual reality. So we have to stop and think, look at the big picture. What are my goals? How can I stay centered? How am I communicating with myself right now? Let me take a moment. Let me take charge of the left side and the right side and have them working together in harmony rather than working against each other. So stop and think for a moment. And by thinking, I also want to say feeling. Thinking and feeling a lot of the time are not as separate as we are led to believe. They both originate up here. They both come from up here, even though it feels like it's here, right? All of that stuff is centered up here. And the line between thinking and feeling can be blurred. And sometimes that can be a very good thing because it allows us to tap into both the logic side and the feeling side and have them working together again to figure out what might be the best solution. Whether it's the best solution to solve this problem right now or the best solution to put myself in the right mindset to be open to the solution when it presents itself. We are our own roadblocks most of the time. We are putting up brick walls in front of ourselves every moment of every day. We are putting those walls up between us and the potential solution of a problem. And it's our job to break those walls down so that when the solution presents itself, we're open to it, that we're not blocked from it. Another way to take charge, very powerful, is through study and motivation. Got a book right here. You can see it, Awaken the Giant Within. Tony Robbins. I brought that book up a number of times before. I keep it here on my desk because I pull it out and I read from it on a regular basis. It doesn't have to be that book, but just if you're in a moment where you're not feeling particularly energized, we talked about this when it came to self-communication as well. Stop what you're doing for a moment and read something that energizes and motivates you. Put your mind into a different place. It's what we call breaking the pattern. You've got to sometimes shock the brain a little bit by doing something that surprises even you in a moment. Do something that breaks the pattern. We are creatures of pattern. Our brains are nothing but a series of interweaving patterns, pathways, neurons that are sending, receiving, processing, and feeding back information on a moment-to-moment basis, just like a computer. If you interrupt that circuit for a moment, you can change what process is going on in your mind. We've all had this happen, right? Where maybe you're having a really bad day for whatever reason, and then somebody comes along that says something surprising to you. Hey, you look great today. You know, have you lost weight? Or you look fantastic. You have this particular glow. Or I haven't seen you in so long. I've missed talking to you. And all of a sudden, just something has interrupted this pattern of negativity that might have been happening in that day. And it was something so simple. That's an external thing that can cause that to happen. But what if we could be the conduit for that congruency change, what's the word I want here? That pathway change, right? What if we could be the conduit for that instead of having to have it come from something external that we don't have control over? And through study and motivation, you can help with that. By reading something that motivates and energizes you, by thinking about something, and this is a little spoiler alert, the exercise, this is going to lead to the exercise I'm going to have for you, is to write down things that you're proud of as you have accomplished these so that you can go back and refer to them. And that leads us next into management of mood. It's very easy for us to think in any given moment that, you know what, I just don't have control over how I'm feeling right now. And we've all had those moments. Some of us have them on a consistent basis. That has become our pattern. That is our congruency, is feeling like I can't manage my mood. And while I'm by no means trying to say this is easy, I'm by no means trying to say I am a psychologist and so forth, but the truth of the matter is every single thing that I've studied about human psychology over the years and about self-growth and self-improvement has shown that we have way more capability of managing our mood than we even realize. By breaking those patterns, by watching how we talk to ourselves and communicate with ourselves, we are rewriting those neural pathways, both in the short term and in the long term by forming these habits. It's the difference between when you do something that did not get you the results you wanted to get. You take an action and it did not get the results you wanted. It's the difference between saying and believing to yourself, I'm such an idiot, I can't believe I did something so stupid. Or saying, well, I'm proud of myself for taking action. That action didn't get me the results I wish I would have gotten, so I'm going to try something different next time. But I'm proud of myself for constantly moving forward. Now, what's the difference between those two statements? It's massive. And not only is it going to potentially affect how you think about yourself in any given moment, but it's also going to blaze the trail for those neural pathways, and it's going to cause you to think that way more frequently. All right. Amanda says, 9 times out of 10, what we think will happen doesn't happen. And it's such an important insight. We think we can predict the future, but we can't. You're absolutely right. And more time has been wasted, more energy has been spent, more frustration has been caused by us worrying about things we just can't control, worrying about the worst possible thing happening when the chances of that happening are relatively slim. And that just takes us away from focusing on the things that we can control, which is how we think and prepare to respond to things, all right? So management of mood becomes very important, and only you have control over that. Yes, outside influences have an impact, but they only have an impact to the degree that you agree to let them. That's the truth. It's the fact. It's the truth. Now, granted, all of us to varying degrees have different levels of challenge in dealing with mood, including people that are diagnosed with different neurological disorders that can cause it to be that much harder to manage mood. And I am by no means belittling anyone that is dealing with a diagnosed medical condition that may make it that much harder to deal with mood properly. However, I also don't want to make it sound, even to somebody diagnosed with a particular neurological challenge that others of us may not be dealing with, I don't want to make it sound like you don't have any control, because that's not fair to you either, and it's also not the truth. You may have more control than you think, more power than you think. And while part of what you should be doing in order to seek solutions to this challenge that you may have is seeking out medical professionals that can help you with that. And by medical, I mean not only in the physical medical field, but also in the mental medical field. But also realizing that by making some small changes, you may be able to mitigate or control a little bit more some of those physiological situations that you're in that you haven't been able to manage quite as well before. So it becomes both an external and internal thing that you need to deal with, okay? Amanda says, learning from mistakes rather than dwelling on them is huge. Yes, absolutely right. And Julie says, have faith in yourself and your manuscript, quote unquote. And she says, my article reviewer for a peer reviewer journal, but I think this applies to anything in our lives. Just change the manuscript to what you are working on. Have faith in yourself and your manuscript. That's great. And Patrick says, love that, Julie. Yes, that is a great point there. And that's what I love about this group, is these comments are just as vital as anything I can say here. I'm so glad to have people chiming in with things that have helped them with these challenges as well going forward day to day. Fantastic stuff there. Thank you for sharing that, Julie, and Amanda as well. And then last but not least, of course, is help from others. I just mentioned that with people that should be seeking out doctors and psychologists to help with, diagnosing whether there is a physical issue here that has to be dealt with, in addition to the management of mood through our own control, but also just look for help from others in moments where you're feeling a little bit ill-equipped to deal with a challenge. That's what this group is here for each week. That's why I hope that each of you will show up every week live. It's so important because it's sending a message to your brain when you show up here at 10 o'clock in the morning. I know it can sound self-serving. I mean, it makes no difference to me personally whether you show up or not, because I'm doing this program here no matter what, okay? It makes a difference to you, though, because it is sending a powerful message to your mind that's saying, I am committed to doing something to make these changes and do it on a consistent, congruent basis. Okay? Help from others. That's why we're here. We're here to help each other. We're here to help each other and help ourselves as much in the process by having these conversations. Lucid or Lunatic says, I like to remember, are you led by your spirit or your wound? That's great. Julie says, I ask myself that question too, Joni. So important. And Potts Francis says, VOI FYI. All right. Well, welcome to you, Potts Francis, as well. All right, let's move on from there and talk about some key concepts here. Now, I'm just going to be touching on these key concepts for a moment, and I'll be going into more detail on some of these as we go forward in future weekly programs. The first thing I want to mention, and I alluded to this earlier, is I want to mention creating your manual by doing a journal. Start a very simple, what I like to call a success journal. Now, this might be, if you already keep a diary or a journal of some sort for yourself, this might be part of that, or it might be a separate journal that you keep that is just a success journal. That's what I personally do. I like to have them separate because there are going to be times you're going to want to go back to this success journal and refer to it. In fact, you should be doing this on a regular basis. What I mean by a success journal is keep a list, and you can do this through, writing, just, in sentences and paragraphs. You can do it just by a bullet list, whatever works best for you. But keep a list of anything that you have accomplished that you're proud of on any level. This doesn't have to just be the big things. It can be small things as well. And just keep a list of these, a running tally of the things that you've done that you're proud of on any level. When I get done here today, I can put on my list that I'm proud that I showed up at 10 o'clock this morning, prepared and hopefully prepared enough in a way that could put some positivity out in the world to anyone that attended live or watches the recording of this. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that because of feeling like I'm at least doing something to try to make a little bit of a change in my small sphere of influence in the world. But it can also be something like, hey, I just got done doing a workout and I pushed myself a little harder than I usually do, and I feel really proud about that. And I'm glad I'm consistently working out to keep this physical vessel functioning as well as I possibly can. Keep a success journal, so very powerful, and then go back to it and refer to it over and over again, especially when you might be in a moment of feeling a little bit negative, or you might be feeling like you're not being as proactive as you should be. You're not having as much control over this computer of our mind, okay? The next thing is PTS time. Now, I'm going to devote an entire program just to PTS time. It is truly one of the things that I can pass on to each of you that I feel probably has more possibility of completely transforming your life from this day forward than anything else I can talk about. But we had to talk about belief and self-communication last week. We've got to talk about the left brain, right brain principle today before we get into PTS time. But I promise you, stick with these programs. Attend live so you hear what PTS time is. That's going to be in probably either next week or the week after is when we will probably dive into the details of exactly how to do PTS time. PTS stands for planning, thinking, and study time every day for 30 to 45 minutes per day, first thing in the morning. We talked a little bit about this before on one of our programs, about how, this computer, we need to load the operating system in. We talked a little bit about that today as well. Well, PTS time acts as the operating system for the computer of your brain. And by doing very rigorous and controlled planning, thinking, and study time every day, first thing in the morning, you are setting your brain up with the proper operating system so it can better handle any information that comes into it throughout the course of the day and spit out solutions rather than spitting out frustration, spitting out feelings of failure, spitting out negativity. All right? So take action and get into PTS time. Belief, we already talked about this on one of our previous programs, the basis for everything. We are forming beliefs every moment of every day. Remember, the map is not the terrain. The map is not the terrain. If I go onto Google Maps and pull up Google Maps, that does not necessarily mean that that map is the actual terrain. It's a representation of what that terrain may be. And anyone that's been on Google Maps knows that, hey, if they haven't updated those images recently, it might be a little bit out of date. Could be many years out of date. The map is just a representation. And that's what our belief structure is. It's just a representation of what we believe to be reality. But challenge those beliefs on a moment-to-moment basis and really take charge of your belief structure. Scott is on. Hey, Scott says, I'm proud to know you. Oh, well, I'm not sure who Scott's referring to, but you know what? I hope that Scott is referring to each and every one that's on this program, to be perfectly honest with you. Scott, thank you so much for being here, and it's great to see you on. And also, Julie says, I use a gratitude journal each day and have for years, which has made a huge difference. Similar to a success journal, but it's helped me to find so many things in life, big and small, that I am blessed with. That is fantastic. A thankfulness journal, right? Or as Julie called it, a gratitude journal. I love that. I love that. That is so powerful. Julie says, amen to that, Scott. Patrick says, we have a couple of spammers. I think I blocked them, Todd. Thank you so much, Patrick. Little management of our chat window there. That's all right. It's all good. Thank you, Patrick. I appreciate that. Beth Ann says, I never had to study as a kid. Now I don't know how to as an adult. I'll tell you this, Beth Ann. Oh, you totally do know how. Oh, you absolutely know how. It's like riding a bike. You don't forget. We're programmed to know how to study and how to assimilate and process information. Our brains are already set up to do that. You've just gotten out of the habit of doing it in a way that is congruent and positive for you as a person, a way that blends your left brain and right brain in a way that you can retain and learn and process information better and better. You absolutely can do that. Okay, you just have to get back into the habit of it. Scott says, great to see you too, brother. And Beth, good morning as well, Scott says. So fantastic. Let's talk about physical health. The mind-body connection is vital. You wouldn't have a computer that was in a room that was filled with dust, where you were sawing stuff and sawdust was flying everywhere and it was flying right into the fans of the computer and it was blowing it into the processor. You would never do that, right? Why? Because that's going to cause that computer to not run well. In fact, that computer is going to clog up, overheat, and shut down before you know it. The environment in which we put our computer is vital, and you can't disconnect the mind and the body. Because guess what? The mind, as ethereal as it can feel, and how it's tied to us spiritually, depending on what you believe, is a very powerful thing. But at its heart, it is biology. And we got to take care of that biology by taking care of what's happening all in here. Don't ignore your physical body as well, because your brain is physical too. And last but not least, we've talked about dangerous people. Be careful who you take advice from. Be careful who you're listening to on a regular basis. Be careful who you are giving weight to their words. There is absolutely nothing wrong with saying to yourself, or sometimes even to others, your output right now, what you're giving to me, what the communication structure you're using with me right now is toxic to me right now, and I can't have that in my life right now. And that's okay, even when that comes from family. Just because they're blood does not mean that they're a positive influence on your life from a moment-to-moment basis. Now, I'm also not saying just knee-jerk reaction, shun everyone who doesn't have the same viewpoint as you, or shun everyone that doesn't constantly tell you things that are great about you. No, of course not. We're always assessing, but we know that there are certain people in our lives that can be negative on a regular basis, that when we're with them, we feel less in control, less powerful, less good about ourselves and about the world around us. You have control over whether you keep those people in your lives or not. Beth Ann says, hi, Scottson. Nice. I'm going to call you Scottson from now on. I like that. All right. What are your biggest challenges when it comes to running your brain? All right. And then I promise we're going to open this up to more discussion here for probably the last 10 minutes or so. First of all, left brain. Do you have more challenge managing your left brain? Do you have more challenge managing your right brain? Each person's going to be, let me go back to that. There we go. Each person's going to have a different answer to that. Some of us, most of us, tend to be a little more, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, more left brain or more right brain. More logic driven, more emotionally driven, more fact based, more intuition based, more I gotta have a system in place to handle these things versus I like to just fly by the seat of my pants and be a little bit more spontaneous. We both have both of those, but we tend to be driven a little bit by one side more than the other. And that can change throughout our lives. It can change on a yearly basis. It can change on a daily basis sometimes. So the more we can understand the signs, when we're trying to process a challenge or a piece of information that's come into us and we feel like we're not processing it well, take a moment. That's that time to think, right? Say, I'm going to take a moment. We tend to rush, right? Especially in this society. It's a rush society. And it's just going to get more like that every day as information becomes accessible at our fingertips at every given moment. So we just want everything now. We believe we should have everything now. Everything is quick. Everything is streaming. Everything is the internet. I can have it whenever I want it, and I can have it immediately, and this is amazing, in abundance. But in reality, we need to take moments to stop for a moment and just give ourselves permission to say, hold on, I don't have to rush this. I can take 30 seconds and ask myself this question. How am I processing this right now? Am I looking at this logically? Are my emotions driving me a little too much maybe? Should I look at this a little more logically? Is logic driving me too much and I'm not allowing myself to feel what I should be feeling right now in this moment to help me better cope with this particular challenge? And it might be different for every single challenge. So the more we can just be aware of, do I tend to be more left brain or right brain? Which one am I using a little bit more now? And knowing I have access to both, the more we are prepared to have all of the weapons in our arsenal needed to combat this challenge. I don't like using weapons as an analogy very often, but in this case, I think it works. Actually, you know what? I've got a better one. All the tools in our tool chest, right? Anybody who's a mechanic, which I am not, okay? It's not one of my strong suits. It's also not one of my areas of interest particularly. But anyone who's a mechanic knows you've got to have the right tool for the right job. And sometimes the right tool for the right job is going to be this side of the brain, and other times it's going to be this side, and most of the time it's going to be some interesting combination of both. Scott says, my brain is my biggest challenge in managing my brain. You're right. It is. Because we're having to rewrite some of these neural pathways, habits that have been formed from birth and have been nurtured through the things that have happened in our lives. Every moment that happens in our lives is impacting this brain. It's imprinting itself. But does that mean we don't have the ability to change some of that, or at least take control of it and mold it? We absolutely do have that power, way more than we think. So Scott, my recommendation with you would be just to give yourself the knowledge that you can overwrite some of this stuff that may cause you to feel like this is just the way my brain is. My brain is my biggest problem. Well, now just start looking at your brain. It's something sometimes as simple as starting with this. Look at your brain not as the problem, but as the asset for change. Your brain is everything, right? That's what I think. That's a mind bender, a brain teaser that I heard once, which is, what is everything to you and nothing to everyone else? And the answer is your mind. Your mind is everything to you, and yet it's nothing to everyone else. They don't use that every day. It doesn't mean they don't care about you, but it's nothing to them, but it's everything to you. You've got power to do that. Lucid or Lunatic says, right, Scott, it's the voices that are hardest to manage. But notice what Joni said there. It's hardest to manage, not impossible. And it just takes small steps. We have to take action, take small steps. Is this going to magically transform your life overnight? Probably not. But do you have the power to make small changes that become bigger changes, that become an avalanche, that's just barreling down the side of that mountain with glorious, beautiful snow of accomplishment? What a weird analogy there. Lucid also says it's getting to the balance That is the goal to me. Absolutely. There you go. All right. So with that, we're going to open it up to discussion here. So any comments or questions you have about what we talked about today? How are you all feeling? Type that into the chat. How are you feeling after this 45 minutes so far or so that we have spent together? And I have an exercise for you for this week. Now, I hope that each of you are doing these exercises. Now, I know I've done programs before where I thought, I don't need to do the exercises. I'm just going to show up each week for the classes, but I don't need to do the exercises. And I didn't get nearly as much out of them. I got maybe 10% out of those situations that I could have gotten out of them if I had actually taken action and done the actual exercises. Your exercise for this week is start your success journal. Start it right now. Start it when we're done here. Why put it off? Don't put it off. Do it now. When we're done here at 11 o'clock sharp, or maybe a little bit after, just a tiny bit. I'm going to try to end right on time if I can. Sit down right then and just start that journal. You can do it on paper. You can do it on your phone. You can do it on your computer. But just do it somewhere where you can have access to it on a regular basis and just write down something you're proud of. Write down, I'm proud that I showed up at 10 o'clock this morning with this group to start working on taking charge. That's something to be proud of. Put that on your success journal and then keep adding to it. Write down everything you do that gives you a sense of accomplishment. Anything you're proud of. Nothing is too big or small. So I want to ask each of you, who's going to do this? Who's committing to doing this? I'm raising my hand. I'm going to keep doing it. I've already started doing it. I'm going to continue doing it this week. I'm going to probably put it into overdrive this week. I'm going to probably make a conscious effort to write more things down than I normally do. Type in the chat if you're going to commit to doing this. Type into the chat if you say, I don't think I am going to commit to it. Let's have a discussion about why you don't want to do it or you don't believe it's going to work for you or whatever. Type in. Either way, interaction is important. I want to hear from you. Julie says, I think I've worked so hard to keep the right and left brain balanced over the years that I have a hard time letting one or the other take precedence when necessary now. You got to give permissions, right? Just like a computer. Sometimes you got to give admin permissions to one part of the computer program or another, right? You got to give permission sometimes for one of them to take lead on solving an issue. Lucid or Lunatic says, oh, I already do it and I will continue. Yes, 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 yes. Way to go, Joni. Amanda says, I am going to do it. I love it. That's two of you that have committed to doing this. I want to hear from the rest of you. All right? Type it in here. Are you going to do this? And if not, that's okay. Don't lie to me and say you're going to do it. You don't have to tell me how you really feel. If you're not going to do it, let me know why you're thinking of not doing it. We'll have a discussion about that if you're open to that, okay? All right. Any other questions or comments? What are we doing? How are we doing on time here? We got about 7 minutes left. I want to open this up to all of you for any questions or comments that you have. Next week, okay, it looks like I already committed to it. I totally forgot. It was between goals and the process for setting great goals, or the specifics of PTS time and how to make sure that you start every day in the best place possible. And as I was putting today's program together, I totally forgot. I did make the decision I'm going to do PTS time next time. I think that's going to be best. We're going to do PTS time first, and then we'll really get into the goals as well. So be sure to show up next week. PTS time, I am not exaggerating to say, this has the potential to transform your life from this point forward. No matter what is important to you in your life, no matter what is, what areas you want to improve upon, personal or helping others or whatever it is, PTS time is the key. Julie says, I will try adding the success journal to my gratitude journal. I'm not sure how I feel about the success part, but I'll give it a try. I love that. Now, and the important thing, Julie, is, and I know you already know this, but I just want to state this for everyone, is, a gratitude journal is very different from a success journal. A gratitude journal, also important and wonderful. I'm so glad you're doing that. And don't stop doing that. But that's what you're grateful for in your life. A success journal is, what are you proud of that you've accomplished? You've got to give yourself permission, Julie, to be proud of things and to acknowledge you're proud of them. It's not bragging. Nobody else is ever going to see this success journal if you don't want to share it with anyone. You don't have to. This is for you. But if we can't take a moment and acknowledge the things we're proud of that we've done for ourselves or others, Julie, you're a huge family person. I know you're constantly doing things for your family that you can be proud of. Give yourself permission. And that's what the success journal is doing. It's giving you permission to acknowledge the things you're proud of in your life. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's crucial in our lives to be proud of ourselves. Okay? So yeah, absolutely, please do that for sure. All right. No other comments or questions are coming in. I have not heard from a few of you committing to doing this. I'm a little concerned. So a little bit concerned. Was today helpful? How are you feeling about this? Did the stuff that we talk about today resonate with you? Did the stuff that we talked about today feel possible for you? Or are you going to leave today feeling like, well, that stuff might work for Todd. It might work for other people, but it won't work for me. My brain's just not wired that way, or I could never do that, or whatever. What are you feeling about today? The rest of today's event is all about communicating for the next 4 minutes or so, and I want to hear from you. Lucid or Lunatic says, Julie, if you are grateful for things, this is a success to you. What do you do that makes you feel grateful to be alive? Those are points of pride. Exactly. The gratitude that you have for the things in your life are at least partially due to actions that you're taking on a moment-to-moment basis. The relationships that you are fostering with the people around you. And those are things that we should be proud of. Pride is not conceit. Pride is not a negative thing. Pride is not being is not overblowing your ego. A little bit of an understanding of our ego is important, and pride is an important part of that. All right. If there are no other questions or comments, we're going to wrap up today's program. I want to leave you with one last thought. Please share this link of this YouTube Live. I believe if you share this with people after the live program is done, it will share the recording of today's program. If there's anyone in your life that you feel like these principles and concepts could be helpful to in any small way, I want you to share this out there. Share this link with them. And share with them the invitation to join us in future programs. Join the Facebook group that you're already hopefully a part of, where we're talking back and forth in between these weekly programs. Scott says, my ADHD is my biggest obstacle. My chores that I need to get done are 1, I need to get these dishes done. 2, where are my dish towels? 3, laundry folded. 4, wow, my sock drawer needs arranging. So Scott, planning is going to be the most important thing for you. In the stuff that we talked about today in this program, the planning part is going to be important. You need to sit down and structure out your day a little bit more and say, from this time to this time, here's what I'm going to do. It is not going to be the dishes. It's not going to be the laundry. I'll have time later to do those. I've scheduled those in for 4 o'clock today, whatever it is. But from 11 o'clock till 12 o'clock today, I'm doing this, and I'm going to stick to that because I determined that this is important for me to get this done now. You have, and ADHD is a real thing, absolutely. But also, using that purely as, and I'm not saying you're doing this, Scott, okay? I'm not saying that you're doing this. But it's easy for us to use that as a crutch and to say, well, I have ADHD, so I can't really control this. When in reality, people every day, it's being shown that people with ADHD, when they get doing something that they love and are passionate about and feel that is important right now, they can focus like none other. And Scott, I've seen that in you. For somebody with ADHD, I have seen you focus better than most people I've ever seen in my life. When we're working together on a film project and it's something you're passionate about, you are super focused. Even if there might be moments of where, yeah, nope, now I feel the ADHD coming a little bit. You are supremely focused. So what that sends you the message is that you have the capability of being super focused anytime. It's just how you are looking at what it is that you're focused on doing and what importance are you assigning to it. Okay, that's a very simplified answer to that, Scott. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm diminishing the challenge of ADHD, but also I want to encourage you to know that you maybe have a little bit more control over it, maybe even a lot more control over it than you've ever realized through some consistent and congruent action to start setting some new boundaries for yourself and setting some new habits for yourself. I hope that's helpful, Scott. I really do. And thank you for typing that in. That's wonderful. And if you want to talk more about this further with me or any other challenges that any of you might be having, reach out to me personally. I'm here for you all the time. Reach out to me on the Facebook group as well, and we will talk again next week. Julie says, thank you all. Much to think about. Have to run. Making a road trip with my daughter. See you next week. Thank you, Julie, for being here. Drive safely. Have a great road trip. And thank you for all your interaction today as well. Have a wonderful week, everyone. Take charge of that manual of the human brain. And I look forward to talking with all of you next week. Put it on your calendar now, 10 a.m. next week. Be here. I will be here, ready to go with PTS time. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.